I asked one of my assistants one time, I was like, hey, what's my biggest weakness? And she's like, as soon as we start to put structure and order into anything, you throw a hand grenade in it because you can't deal with anything that is not complete chaos. And I'm like, that sounds about right.
You are listening to Conversations with Misfits, Mavericks, and Trailblazers.
Welcome to the Head Smack Podcast. My name is Paul Pavolny. So excited to have Josh Forti on the call today on the podcast. Excited to hear about the golden microphone method and a little bit about the head smacks that got him to where he's at and how he got the golden mic. Josh, good to have you here, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Paul. I love being interviewed, so this will be good.
Good. Well, how did, let's go ahead and start from the beginning. And even before the golden mic, because I know you're an entrepreneur, you've done a lot of things, you've had quite an interesting journey along the way. Share a little bit about, Josh and where you started off. Like, where did this all start for you?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, born in Wisconsin, moved to LA when I was 1, grew up in the suburbs there until I was 11 when my parents moved us across the country to a farm in the middle of nowhere, and was homeschooled for all my life. So really got started on a farm in Indiana in a cornfield. Incredible work ethic and a just deep desire to be free, and I wasn't, right? I felt stuck.
Yeah.
And I felt trapped, and I felt like every decision that we made, it was due to lack of money, which ultimately led to some false beliefs that, maybe money, fame, or success would lead to freedom. And so that got me into entrepreneurship. I mean, through several failed business attempts, both in person and then online. And then, crazy. I mean, hard, like really brutal, just brute force hard work for many years, or all of my early 20s. So
what was the gateway drug into entrepreneurship? Like entrepreneurship and farming, I guess they're very different. Maybe you see some relationships to it, but what was the gateway thing that was that turning point from farming to entrepreneurship?
I didn't want anybody to be able to tell me what to do, and I thought if I want to be rich, I need to start a business, because I thought starting a business was the only way to make money. I didn't think you could get rich with a 9-to-5 job. And so the combination of I don't want anybody to tell me what to do, and I want to be rich. So that was the gateway into entrepreneurship, I think. And I mean, I have explored, for a while after I was an entrepreneur became this sexy term, and I was like, I'm not like everybody else. I'm not an entrepreneur. And then I was like, I'm a business owner, or no, tried that. I'm an entrepreneur. I think I was born one, right? I mean, some people just are, and I think I'm definitely one of those for sure.
Well, that's very interesting, because I've had this same conversation with several people, and they have different views on what it means to be an entrepreneur and what it means to be a business owner. And for some people, they say it's no different. Other people have very distinct. So how would you define the difference for the person that says, I want to start a business, because I'm an entrepreneur? How would you define it, and how would you encourage them either way?
Yeah. I mean, a business owner owns a business. You know what I mean? Like so
does an entrepreneur. They
can, right? A business owner owns a business, typically, is involved in some way in the business or runs it. And I think the mindset of perhaps a business owner is, I have a business that I'm running, right? Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we need business owners, absolutely. Right. I think entrepreneurs at their core love chaos and solve problems. Right.
I love chaos.
but for real, right? Yeah. I mean, I asked one of my assistants one time, I was like, hey, what's my biggest weakness? And she's like, as soon as we start to put structure and order into anything, you throw a hand grenade in it because you can't deal with anything that is not complete chaos. And I'm like, that sounds about right.
I love that.
And so I mean, I think naturally as entrepreneurs, we go and start businesses, but I'm not a good business owner. I don't know if I've ever built a successful business, if you will. I've made a lot of money, but systems, operations, things, and it's different, right? And so I think entrepreneurs at their core were born to go into chaos and explore and solve problems and create and do and not have anyone tell us what to do and bring the future into reality. And I mean, you look at Elon Musk. I mean, he's a business owner, but that dude's an entrepreneur, right? Like he's a creator at a core, right? And that's me, for sure.
So for that person that realizes, yeah, I kind of like chaos. I'm kind of, I don't want to be a business owner. I like chaos,
Yeah.
but chaos can also make you broke. Like if you
Yeah.
don't funnel that chaos somehow. So, you've built, big businesses, and I don't want to make assumptions of
Yeah.
where the commas are with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what would you tell that person that's like, yeah, I kind of do like chaos. I don't
Yeah.
want to be a business owner. I don't want to put on pants every day.
Yeah.
I like the chaos. What would you tell them?
I mean, I think first and foremost, for me, I had to sit down and ask myself the question of who am I? And I had to really be okay with what I was and what I was not.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think I know for me, I liked to think I could do everything. I like to think that I could run a company and do marketing and do operations or sales or, and like at some point you just had to be like, oh, there's people that are better at other things than I am, and I'm better at them. Like I'm better at this than other people. Right. And
Yeah.
I think first and foremost is you gotta know who you are and what you are. And just, I mean, like I tell people all the time, I'm like, don't get me wrong. I love influence and I love, attention and building, and offers and stuff. Like also there is definitely a part of me that's like, I wish I could be invisible behind the scenes
Yeah.
and just, like, I don't know, smoke weed in the mountains and be like, you know what I mean? Like I wish, but like, that's not me. Right. And
Right.
so
Right.
the first thing is that, and then the second thing is go get someone that is good at what you're not
Yeah.
and like listen to them. Right. Like that was my
Yeah.
big mistake, man. Like, I mean, I thought I could do it all. I thought I had to make the decisions and in charge. And, um, one of the things you alluded to was like you built, successful, big businesses. I, 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 the commas are there. I would not
Right.
equate it to business, right? I've done a lot with sales. I've done a lot with marketing. I've made some great offers. I've worked inside of or with, big companies or whatnot and helped people make a lot of money. No question. Right. That I can say with certainty, but,
Yeah.
the business aspect of things, like I'm learning, right? Like I am learning how to
Yeah.
run a business. I'm learning what it means to be a leader and in a team, and work with a team. Like I'm learning that. And so I think, for that person, first figure it out, like figure out who you are. And for me, I'm like, I'm not a business owner. I'm not a systems person. I've got some stuff to work on. Let me double down on my strengths and hire or get around people that complement those. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always say, grow your strengths and delegate your weaknesses,
Yeah.
wherever you can. You understand who you are, what you're
Yeah.
capable of, what your skills are, what your strengths are, what you lean into, what you can do naturally or what you can do with very little effort. Because I realized that for me, there are some things that if I try really, 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 really hard to get good at, I get average at it, but there are some things that
Yeah.
I don't have to put in a lot of effort and I can get really good at it.
I
And
would agree
so
with
for
that.
you,
Yeah.
when it came to that realization for you, was it a mentor? Was it a VA? Was it a partner? What was that first step towards getting yourself out of the way of your own success and bringing somebody along that took you to the next level?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I run a Bible study, men's Bible study at my house every Wednesday night. And one of them asked me this, like, what would you equate to like you being successful? Like, what was the thing? And I was like, I worked really, really, really hard and I hired coaches,
Nice.
right? Like, and in that order, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I worked really, really, really hard and I made some progress and spun in circles for a long time, right? And
Yeah.
then I hired coaches.
Yeah.
I know the coaching industry. It's fun to bash on coaches. It's fun to be like, well, I am a product of the coaching industry, right? I have
Yeah.
spent over $400,000 of my own money. And by the way, like real 400 grand, like actual dollars, not a fake
Yeah.
value stack. $400, like no, like it's
Yeah.
on the tax forms, like 400
Right.
grand of coaching. And I think the first real coach, like mentor, even more than like an actual mentor that I had was Katie Richardson. And she, my brother had passed away. I had left my business. Went around the world. My wife gets super duper sick, like really like close to death sick almost. Like, I
Wow.
mean, and I'm sitting 10 months ago at, $70,000 a month revenue. and, millions of followers managed. Right. And now I'm like, not blew all my money, but like spent it all on my wife's getting sick and traveling and all this. And I'm like, what happened? Right. And I hired Katie, and she was very expensive, way more money than I had. Right. Did a payment plan, told her I don't have the money to pay you next month, so let's get to work. And it's interesting. The very first call of the very first question that she asked me, right? We got on and I start telling her all my problems and and all this stuff. And she was $60,000, right, for the year. And, I get about 45 minutes into the call, and she looks at me and she goes, "Okay, Josh, you done?" And I'm like, "I think so." Right. And she goes, "Josh Forti, who are you?" Right. And like, I didn't like, that was not what I hired her for. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know. I didn't even know how to answer that question. Like the first time I answered, I was like, "I'm a entrepreneur, podcaster, Patriots fan." Like, what, like who, what, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think the turning point there, I mean, that was outside of rededicating my life to Christ. I think that was probably the single biggest turning point in my life, in my business, was because before I could figure out what to do in the business, before I could figure out what even I was supposed to, like, what business I was supposed to pursue, before I could figure out what money was or what my relationships looked like, before any of that, I couldn't even answer the question of who I was. And once I answered that question, and it was painful experience to answer that, right?
Yeah.
But once I answered that, that was the moment where I'm like, oh, I have clarity for the first, like all of this power, this energy, like all of this desire and this, like, now I can do something with it, right?
Wow.
It's not just, So I think that was, I mean, it was definitely a mentor that I think for the first time in her, that made that shift for sure.
So, that is a powerful question, because identity brings clarity. As soon as you know who you are, you know what to do. As soon as you know, as soon as you can answer that question, it lets you know what you do, what you don't do, and all of those things. So I'm sure that when she asked that question, your first answer, your third answer, maybe even fourth, fifth, sixth answer was wrong. Do you want to share some of that process of drilling down? Like, what did that look like for you to drill down to finally figure out who you are?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So when I decided to hire Katie, after she asked me that question or whatever, she said, are you ready to do work? And I said, Katie, I will work harder than any single human being you have ever met in your life. I am ready to work. And she said, good, because I'm going to ask you to do the hardest work that you've ever done in your life, which is do less.
Wow.
Right. And I didn't understand that. And so what she was saying is like, Josh, you're trying so hard. You're putting in so much effort and you're getting nowhere because you don't even know what you should put effort in on. Right. And so I was unknowingly, I mean, really, I didn't know. Like, I was lost. I did not know the work that I was supposed to be doing. Right. And so the process of this was, I actually had to just keep asking myself the question and keep processing it and keep getting it wrong over and over and over and over and over and over again until it started making sense. Yeah. And for me, that was like, I literally drove to Target and I got a notebook. I still have it somewhere, right? And I drove home. I remember I was in my Jeep. It was raining outside, and like I got back, and on like page 1, I like wrote down, who am I? And I mean, it's laughable, right? Yeah. But like that was where I started. And then the next day I did it again. And then the next day I did it again. And then the next day I did it again. And then the next day I did it again. And then the next day I did it again. And I mean, it was like every day for like 4 months. Right.
Wow.
And it was ugly. Like, here I'm like, okay, Katie, I wrote it down. Like, now what? Like, do it again. I'm like, I did it. Right. Like, again. Right. Again. And it was like that process of just over and over and over and over. And then I would go and I'd have something in the business. I'm like, well, and she's like, who are you? And I'm like, the client wants a funnel. What do you mean, who am I, Kate? Like, what do you, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was such a foreign concept that, like, that process of just, over and over and over eventually led to the point where I started recognizing who I was and how I made decisions, right? Like, I was like, oh, that's what it is. Oh, and I have never been, or up until that point, affirmations or like what? Like I didn't, that was not a thing.
Right.
I thought that was insane. But I remember when I finally had some clarity around who I was, right? Like when I finally started getting clear on it, I would go into the bathroom every morning and I'd pull out a red dry erase marker and I'd write on the mirror every morning. I would go, I am powerful. I am influential. I am wealthy, and I am free. And I would write that
Nice.
every
Yeah.
single day. And like the point with that was like, if I don't have power, I can't change my life. If the machine is not plugged in, it's not gonna move, right? And so it's like first and foremost, so like I had to have power. And so my lens of life was like in any situation, first I went, okay, if I'm gonna go record a podcast or I'm gonna go sign a client, first it's I have power. Okay, cool. That gives me the ability to move. I have influence. Okay, I have the ability to change other people's opinions and make their right. I have wealthy. Meaning I have access to unlimited resources if the idea is good, right? And then I am free. I am free to make choices. And so I would go and just over and over and over would repeat myself to this, and I would go and like find evidence of it. And I would repeat. Like months. And 4 months later, it was about 4.5 months, I think. 4.5 months later, we didn't talk about the business. We didn't talk about funnels. We didn't talk about sales. We didn't talk about none of it. Right. 4.5 months later, I made my first $100,000 in a day.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that all came from just chipping away until you got the core essence of who you were.
Right. Getting down to that core. And, my whole life, I was trying to work hard, thinking that the way you progress through life was to work hard, when in reality, and I'm a huge believer in hard work, right? I mean, crazy work ethic and just sheer put your head down and do the work. Absolutely. The way that you're going to move through life, though, is not only by hard work, it's by actually shifting your lens, right?
Yeah.
You actually have to take a literal different approach. And my lens was, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know that was a thing. And then all of a sudden it was like, eyes open. Whoa, this is who I am. Let's go do that.
That's amazing. And so when it comes to coaching, is there's a lot of variations of coaches. Yeah. And so two part to the question is, first of all, for that entrepreneur that loves chaos and needs to hire a coach, what would be the type of coach they would hire? And then secondly, what kind of coach was she?
I don't know if I have the right answer.
Yeah.
Universally applied on which coach you need to hire. I think that I knew that Katie was right for me, even when I didn't have the money and was at a very low point in my life, because she spoke to me different than every other person did. And it was so deeply obvious that like whatever she was offering, like I couldn't tell you, like there's not a single person probably in the world that would have logically looked at my situation and looked at what was being offered and been like, yep, that's the move. But I knew because of how she spoke to me. I think that it would be a wise starting point, though, to ask yourself who has the life that you want and start there.
Yeah.
Because I think that life values, belief system, right, that you want, and start there. I think that's going to look different for each person.
Right.
Katie, for me, she calls herself a clarity coach, right? Mm-hmm. Now, a clarity. I think she's as an identity coach, call it a mindset coach, but it was an internal battle, internal game, identity, clarity type of thing. I thought I was hiring for business.
Yeah. Right.
Right? Like,
that was the Trojan horse that got to the real Josh. And so once you had that clarity, and clarity brings, clarity in the identity and who you are and what you do. What was the next thing for you? Like what started happening? You mentioned you hit $100,000 day, and we'll talk about what that was and then also, talk about your golden mic method that you're doing now. Yeah. But what was the next thing for you? What after you had 4 months in, you had that clarity moment, that aha moment, that head smack that said, okay, here is who I am. What happened next?
I had, up until that point in my life, if I would have looked at my, like everything that led up to it, like I was running from, I don't know if my past is, but I was running from issues, right? Didn't know I was, right? That's not what I would have explained it.
Yeah.
And so what became evident to me was when everybody else was telling me I needed a funnel, or I needed the right offer, or I needed whatever, right? A business. After figuring out who I was, it became very evident that the next step for me was actually to go fix my personal life.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that took some time to figure out exactly what that looked like, because I was at a place where I'm like, I've got to get some money in. And so there was some momentum in the business, but after that big like that $100,000 day and that $150,000 a week, and I was like, oh, okay, like that was my life-changing moment, or money moment, if you will. It was like the day that I believed I could make any amount of money that I wanted. Then it became obvious that money wasn't going to solve my problems. Right. Because I was like, okay, well, I just made more in one day than most people will make in an entire year. This is weird. And I'm like, yeah, like, don't get me wrong, money's awesome. Like, it's not, shouldn't be the goal, but like,
it's nice.
It's super nice, right? Like I live in my wife flies first class, and we drive nice cars and live in a nice neighborhood, and we don't worry about how to pay the bills, right? Like it.
Yeah.
But that, like, it didn't make me happy. It didn't fulfill me, right? It and so that was like this moment of, all right, I got some stuff I got to go figure out. And so I got married. So I ended up proposing to my girlfriend, and we ended up getting married. I pivoted the business to where I basically just worked with like 2 or 3 big clients, like big ones, right? Instead of, trying to scale. And that led me to, in a process of over the course of a year or two, and we made a lot of money during that time, like for other people, and then eventually for myself as well. But like, that's when I refound Christ. And I make the distinction where when I was working with Katie, I found God. But God is, everybody worships God. Right? Like every religion has a God. I serve Jesus Christ. That's who I serve. He's the king. And so when I fixed the past relationships, and when I went and worked through a lot of that crap, it's weird, man. Like, Paul, like it's every time that I've got issues in my business, it's like, it's never a business issue. It's always a personal issue. Right. And so when I went and, like I did, I recommitted my life to Christ. I ended up shutting down the business. I went even further to, make things right in that. And that's when stuff started to take off. Like when I actually figured it, when I got my marriage right, and not that it was ever bad. I mean, like never a problem per se, but like I actually understood my role as a husband and as a leader and as a son and as a father. Now, I mean, we just had our first child, and
hey, congratulations.
Thank you. That was personal. It was fix my like literally fix my personal shit, right? Like actually, right? And that was it. And so that led to more peace, more alignment, more lack of mistakes than anything else.
Would you say it was just another form of understanding who you were?
Yeah. Or maybe I would word it as who I was called to be, like how a man that follows Christ was supposed to live his life. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And how to use my power, how to use leverage, how all those things interacted, for sure. Yeah.
Right. Well, and a new compass, a new way to make decisions, a new filter that changed how you behave in the everyday world. First of all, understanding who you were as a business person, as an entrepreneur, and then who you were as an individual, and who you were in the eyes of God, who you were as a man walking in this world, and that affected what you did as well. And so it was another level of identity clarity that set you on a different path. And so you said you shut down your business after, like, what were you doing to make money up to this point, and why shut it down?
Yeah. So, like I said, I worked with, the 2 or 3 clients for a while. And then, after I got married, it was like, okay, I feel ready to come back and be a little bit more, visible, if you will. The skills that I had acquired, I realized, ooh, people will pay me a lot of money for this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And my background has been organic. I don't get paid ads. I don't understand them. So we were running a business. We launched a coaching business, or I did, and we did well. I mean, we were doing about $250,000 a quarter, with 80-90% profit margins, because we didn't have to run ads. High ticket. So $1 million, and it was me and one person. So it was it was nice. Not bad. On top of, one of my clients at the time was one of the big ones was $25,000 a month client, right? And I had them for 13 or 14 months, right? So there was definitely some money there, right? And there was definitely some time where I'm like, ooh, we're making them millions, okay, or we're doing that. And when I did refine Christ, and it's weird. I feel like there's been 3 phases of my life so far, right?
Yeah.
There's been the phase of life where it's like Josh thinking that like hard work, money, success, fame, that was it, right? From 0 to 25 years old, let's say, right? And then there was this period of, I don't know, 3 years or so where it was just chaos.
Wow.
And like money, not money, personal life, this, and it was like just me figuring it out, right? Like just going back and being like, oh man, like something that I did when I was 17 years old right there, like formed this belief here. So I treated that person that way. Okay. And I mean, that detailed, right? Like actual relationships.
Those are the head smack moments. Yeah.
Right. Like literally like, man, like, okay. Oh, and like finding it. And then it was about 18 months ago, when I recommitted my life to Christ fully. And that's when I was in the middle of all that kind of chaos, where I was building something that wasn't sustainable, but I didn't know it wasn't sustainable. It was just working, whatever. And when I recommitted my life to Christ, it was very, very evident. Like God didn't, Jesus, he didn't want some of me. He didn't want 80% of me. He didn't want 99% of me. It was 100. It was all, right? And that included the business. And I was like, up until that point, it was always, I'll give you everything but the business. Wow. And so it was very clear. People are like, how do you know? I'm like, I don't know, but I knew, right? Yeah. I knew it was go shut it down. And so, we had just done a launch. We did about 200 and I don't know, it was like 240 or something like that. And we refunded, we processed out refunds. We shut the whole thing down. It was
that was in coaching.
Pain. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was painful, but, did that. And that's when life took off. Right. Wow. That's when, now it's, we got more momentum and everything now, but I'm like, now I know who I am. I know who I serve. I know my priorities. Right. Like we're going now, baby. Like it's fun now. It's fun.
Right. And it's no longer siloed, Josh, where you've got work Josh, personal Josh. It sounds like you kind of, once you gave your life to Christ, you kind of created one Josh, as opposed to separating the two and being two very different entities. Yeah. And so, now, you've shut it down, you've relaunched, you've changed your life. So what are you doing now?
Yeah. So, we're doing the Golden Mike, is what, that's the name of the podcast. We have the Golden Mike method, which is our framework, and then the Golden Mike mastery, which is our program. But I think there's some important context to this, because, I believe that there are some really good coaching programs out there in the world, right? I am in no way believe that my way or method is the only way, or that I've learned from some really great people, and I give them tons of credit for it. When I rededicated my life to Christ, this is a key moment in my life, right? Yeah. I realized that for me, Josh, as an entrepreneur, not as a business owner, not as a moneymaker, an investor or whatever, like as Josh, as a human, as a man, as an entrepreneur, like my role in this earth is I am called to be a leader, and I am called to be an example. And when I look at the world today, I don't know your religious beliefs. I don't know anyone's. Whoever's listening, right? Like I don't, quite frankly, I do care, but I don't care like what it is. Like for me, like I go, there's not a lot of great role models right now, right? Yeah. There's not a lot of people out there that you can look up to. And I saw this guy go up to a bunch of people, it was like one of the Instagram reel clips, right? And it was like, name 10, like name all the Kardashians or name all this, and everybody could do it. And then he was like, name one positive male role model for young kids. Wow. And nobody can answer it. Wow. And then it was like, name one positive female role model. And it was like, someone was like Taylor Swift. I'm like, okay, regardless of what you think. Cool, maybe that would fall into that bucket. But like nobody can answer the question. And when I thought about it for men, like I hope I help women. I don't know women. I mean, I'm not a woman. I'm a man, right? Like, so I can speak to men. When I look at the role models that men look up to, like it's really feminized, watered down nothingness or Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. That's a big problem. And in my life, I wanted to have success and I wanted to have fame and I wanted all the things. I didn't have role models to look up to that had the things that I wanted. And so as someone who, I mean, Paul, I have, and credit to Christ with this and my wife for bearing with me through it. Like I have had to fix my shit, right? Like I made some mistakes. I mean, I went through and like spent over 2 years, like fixing, these things and going, okay, how do I go now? And in my business, in my influence, in the skills that I have, how do I go out and live a life that someone can look at and go, that's someone that I could aspire to be like, not because I'm so great, but because for whatever reason, I have this calling on my life to be that for someone else. Right. And listen, I am going to make mistakes. I'm going to mess up and I'm going to own them. Yeah. But when I looked around at the business models that were out there and I looked around at how people were doing in the coaching industry or in the services industry or in this, so many of them did not allow for that. It did not allow you to prioritize your faith and your family and also like have massive amounts of influence and also not have to play a role or a character and like pretend you know it all and also be able to like, hey, we're going to talk about money and we're going to talk about Jesus in the same conversation. And does that make sense?
Right. Absolutely.
And so the Golden Mike Method came out of this, knowledge of, I had a podcast called Think Different Theory for a while. And I grew that to about 1.5 million downloads all organically. We got into a trademark battle with Apple, a legal battle there. We ended up having to shut it down. And, but I knew how to build, podcasts. I knew how to build, networks and influence. And when I looked at the model, like I had done multiple $1 million worth of sales without ever running an ad, without ever running a funnel, just through the relationships that I built, just through me being me on this platform, if you will.
Yeah.
And so when I looked at when I looked at the marketplace and when I looked at people like me, listen, I respect the heck out of you if you're a number 2. I respect the heck out of you if you're a business owner. I respect the heck out of you if you want to, if you're living a good life in a 9 to 5, by all means, like do it, right? Like, But for those of us that are like, right? Like that we know we're meant for something more. We know we know we want to have influence. Like we know we've got this thing and we've got to go, right? It's like, what do we do? And so the Golden Mike Method is a model of business. We really do focus on service providers right now. I have used it for coaching personally. I know it works for the coaching and that aspect of things, particularly very, very high ticket coaching, like, $100,000, that type of stuff. But in the business now, we focus a lot on service providers because I think that's where most people should start. I don't think most people should be coaches. I think they should start with services. Yeah. To create a vehicle where you get to be you, and it is an amplification of you, right? It is an amplification of your values and who you are and the things that you stand for and the ideas that you represent, and provide value to the other people that you're going to interact with, right? And have a business around that. And so we use podcasts differently. I mean, quite frankly, I've looked and I don't actually say, oh, we're different. I'm like, no, because we actually, like, I don't know. People are like, how many downloads you got? I'm like, I don't know. I check it like once every month, or I don't know what. That's not my metric, right? My metric is the relationships, the conversations, the right. So that's the Golden Mike. And that's what we're doing
when you're saying the relationships, the conversations, where are those happening?
On the podcast. Yeah. So the Golden Mike is your ticket. Like if I look around at my life and I go, I mean, I grew up with crazy insecurities, right? Crippling insecurity of like that I wasn't enough, right? I wasn't picked first. I wasn't the cool kid. I wasn't the guy who called for birthday parties, right? Like I was the misfit. And I thought relationships were messy. I thought they were ugly and yucky. And when I look at my life and I go, oh, the things that have propelled me more than anything else, that have helped me more than anything else, that have made me more money than anything else, are relationships. And that's interesting. And so I view a microphone in whatever capacity that is. It doesn't have to be a podcast. We teach that, but like whatever, right?
Right.
I view having a microphone, a golden microphone, as your ticket to getting in front of and having conversations with and building relationships that you would not otherwise be able to have unless you leveraged a microphone.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not the conversations or relationships of the listeners. It's you're inviting people into your world.
Yes.
And having those conversations, which is what this podcast is. I mean, this podcast is essentially that. I call it Head Smack because that came out of me frustrated with creative thinking and coming up with a framework to help people that are not creative think creatively. Yeah. And so Head Smack is that aha moments that we sometimes have. But then also conversations with misfits comes from the idea that I've always been a misfit. 100%. Right now I'm a misfit. I'm living in the deep South. I'm an Aussie. I don't like, guns, sports, hunting, all, trucks. Yeah. I'm not into that. I'm a creative guy living in the deep South. And so I'm a misfit here, but I've always felt like a misfit as well. Yeah. But I want to have those conversations with people that have those similar stories. But also I've got a very rich backstory of experiences. Yeah. And so I've pulled, I'm talking to people that have a little piece of my backstory in their lives and talking to them. Yeah. And so that's what this is about. So I love that you're saying it's about conversations, it's about relationships, but it's not about the relationships just with the listeners. It's relationship. You're talking to the people that interest you and that you want to have those conversations with.
Absolutely. And there's a framework around it. And by the way, I love that. And when I heard your name, like the Head Smack thing, I'm like, ooh, great idea, right? Like it's framed really well and it meets all the boxes. I'm like, ooh, this will be fun. But I told you, I was insecure, right? And all of a sudden, I've got this podcast and I'm talking to like Russell Brunson reached out to be on he reached out to me to be on my show, right? I'm like, what the heck? And all of a sudden I'm, have Brad Gibb, crazy. I mean, one of the smartest human beings I've ever met as a client. And and all of a sudden these very powerful men and relationships. I'm like, why do they want to be friends? Like, why is this happening? And so I went and started studying what made a powerful relationship. And what I found was three things. It's quite fascinating. Number one is that no matter any relationship that you have, you have to connect on values in some way, right? Like we have to have some form of shared value in order for us to have a relationship. Because if we don't, right, we will not connect, right? Like people that agree with blowing people up with bombs versus people that don't, like they don't have no values there, right?
Right.
So first was that. Second,
that's the difference between an acquaintance and a relationship.
100%, right?
Right.
And so that was first. And it's like, okay, but like you and I have both been to events. We've gone to places. We meet people. They're awesome. We're awesome. Hey, let's hang out. Let's do something together. Values. We share it. Nothing happens. Right. And so it's like, okay, that in and of itself, that's the foundation, but that's not enough. And as I went and started studying these, I found that the second piece of these relationships were there must be, in order for a relationship to last, there absolutely must be mutual benefit, meaning both parties have to benefit as the relationship goes on. Yeah. Because if one party doesn't, eventually over time, there's no reason for the relationship. And so, and then the third piece is just consistency over time or trust. And the example I know is extreme, but I always use it is, Adidas and Kanye, they connected on values and were benefiting from each other for a while. And then Kanye came out and was like, I love Hitler. And you're like, well, can't say that, right? Like, right. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, that was broken. And so when I look at a podcast, I think a lot of other people, Paul, quite frankly, I'm pretty dumb. like I really am. Like, you know what I mean? Like I have a ridiculous work ethic, but like,
you're a dumb successful guy, right?
Because I hang out with smart people and I pay smart people, right? Yeah. And so when I think of a podcast, I go, I mean, believe me, I ask myself many times, I'm like, why does anyone listen to me? I'm like, what? But the reason that the approach that I take with a podcast is I go, okay, wait a second. Who are the people? Who are the people that I want to be around? Whose people can I make their life better? Like, who could I provide value to? What's that market? I set a top dog, right? Like, who's the one relationship? If I had them, they would change your life forever. And for me, it was Brunson, right? Yeah. And now I have that relationship, and now it's the next one, and I have my next target, right? But in that, now I'm like, cool. I'm going to use a podcast. I could care less who's listening, and I want lots of people to. Of course, I'm human. I like influence. But the point is I'm going to go and I'm going to create a place where I can invite them on to about something they want to talk about, right? And that represents an idea that they're passionate about, that I care about. that we can have conversations about values. I don't care about what sports team you like. I mean, I like Tom Brady. Cool. But like, let's talk about what matters. Let's talk about family and faith. Let's talk about what, making a difference and having those deep conversations. And then once I have that conversation, once we have this conversation, most people stop there. And I go, wait, but hold on. Mutual benefit is needed, right? Like, both people must win. And so at that point, the question that's always going on in the back of my mind with every person I talk to is, how do I make their life better? And, in the realm that I'm in, and I'm sure you're in as well, the business realm, it's typically doing business together, right? And so, like, do I do business with everybody I talk to? Absolutely not, right? But also, I do business with a lot of them, or I do business with their friends. And it's because, I paid Dan Henry $100,000, like a real $100,000 to go fly down to his house for 2 days. And it's like, did Dan Henry win? Yep. Did I win? Yep. Both of our lives got better. And people paid me $100,000. And did they win? Yep. And did I win? Yep. So it's like in business, money's a good thing. Like, that's how we measure value, right? And that concept of the podcast is, yep, I'm going to be the example. I hope people listen. I hope I can be a example of someone who is like, hey, aspire to be this. But really, the podcast, the Golden Mic, it's about creating a place where you can connect on values, understand each other at a deep level, make one another's lives better, stay connected. And that's what we build.
I love that. And so, for the person that is looking for that next phase, they've considered a podcast. Who would a podcast be for, and who would it not be for?
I'll answer that question through the lens of a Golden Mic podcast, because there is a fundamental difference. I mean, really, truly. I believe that a Golden Mic podcast is for anyone who values relationships and connecting with people at a deep level, and has a genuine interest in moving through life with like-minded people, right? They want to connect at a high level. They want to serve at a high level. You want to charge. I mean, I tell people, charge stupid money, right? Don't charge $5,000, charge 50, right? Charge 100, right? Like, make it to where for a fact you can make their life better, right? One of my favorite sayings from Alex Ramosi is, solve the problems of the rich and they will make you one of them, right? And I'm like,
I love that. Yeah.
I grew up in a farm in the middle of nowhere with no money, connections, talent, nothing. I can't call rich people, but they will say yes to a podcast, right? They will say yes to an interview. And so, like, I think it's for the person out there that's like, hey, I want to learn. I want to make people's lives better. I want to amplify, like, I believe in me and I'm going to bet on me, and I want to amplify the ideas and the values that I want to go and create, and, put out into the world. Which I think is a majority of people like me, the entrepreneur, the person out there that's a creator, a leader. I think that it is not for people who, how do I put this? If your intention is to manipulate or get in front of people for the sake of charging lots of money, or trying to look cool, or trying to borrow status so you can carry out your own agenda, I think you absolutely can do that, but it will blow up in your face eventually.
Wow.
Like, people, like, successful people aren't dumb, right? Like, birds of a feather flock together, and most of them can spot a fraud, right? It's like, you can do it for a while, but if your intentions are impure, if you have ulterior motives, if you're not there to make people's lives better, I do think that it will not work for you. So I would, please stay away.
Stay away from the Golden Mic.
Stay away.
You can do something else. And so, somebody that wants to, engage with you, with what you're doing, what does that look like? What are the first things that they need clarity on, and what are some of the first steps into coming into your world?
Yeah. Like I said, dumb. I learned from smart people. Made the mistake for most of my entrepreneurship career, thinking that I could serve everyone, or that I could at least, no matter where you're at, like, come in and help. We can help you. Da 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 da. No, it doesn't work that way. But I would say that the Golden Mic method is something that everybody can use. Our programs and working with me, we have a very specific type of person, right? And so, if you are someone that is starting out, if you're someone that's, dabbling or interested or, still trying to figure things out, listen to the podcast, right? Like reach out. I'll come on your show if you got a good one, right? If you got a good angle and stuff like that. I put out a lot of free content. I'm very, very active on social media, very active on there. We got a free community and stuff. I think you can learn a lot that way. For those people that are like, okay, I'm ready to change my life. I teach people how to make money. I don't teach people how to run a business, but I teach people, I call it getting paid, right? Hashtag get paid. And so if you're a service provider, if you are someone that has a skill, like you know what you are doing, you can get someone a proven result, and you have gotten people a proven result with your skill. That's who we work with. And we're good at it. Not like a little bit good. I think, a lot of people like to leverage old things. 2 years ago we got no, like in the last 4 months, we had 23 clients go through the program. I mean, we're at 50 something now or whatever, but the 23, they did like 1.1 million in sales with no ads. Right. Wow. So like results like that can change your life. And, that's the type of people that we work with. So I say, hey, if you have a skill and you want to sell it for, as Alex Hermosi would say, right? Like mind-breaking amounts of money, like people where they can't even, right? 25, right. 50, $100,000. We can help you do that. But you've got to have a skill. You got to be ready to change who you are and become the person that can sell that. And by goodness, you've got to have some morals and some values, because like, if you don't stand for something, if you don't have an idea that's worth pushing out into the world, well, I mean, we won't accept you, but it will not work. Yep.
Right. So when it comes to, you said you serve service providers. And so I want to ask a couple of things around that. But first of all, what kind of service providers, is there a certain kind of person that does well at this? Mm-hmm. Secondly is, you're talking about doing a podcast and making money.
Yep.
Where does the making money come from?
Like
what part of it?
Yep, absolutely. So when I say service providers, I'm sure if you've been in the online space at all, it's, hey, coaches, consultants, and service providers, agencies, coaches, and consultants. I love coaching. I am a coach, and I do services too. I believe that most people are not ready to coach yet. And I think that if you are ready to coach, for a fact you're ready to coach, right? And so I say service providers is, most people have a skill, but they haven't learned how to teach it yet. They haven't learned how to go out there and, do it for someone else. So we focus on like solopreneurs or people with a small team, typically speaking, people that are 7 figures or below. But really, I mean, it could be anybody with a skill or a service that they can provide. And most of those people are in the wealth space, meaning the service that they offer is wealth. Or a sliver of them would be in the health space, right? If they're like a personal trainer or things like that.
Right.
So those are the types of people. It's like coaching is, dear coaches, you've been sold a lie. You've been sold the lie that you're going to make more money by being a coach than you will by selling services. That is not true.
Wow.
Like you will make, like the 1% will, right? Like if you are really, really good, you will. But it is exponentially easier to sell services. It requires way less talent. It requires way less of you having to know everything. It requires way less actual effort. And you can really change someone's life. And like you can meet rich people, like really successful people, by offering to take away a problem that they have, service, not by offering to coach them, right? And I think that if your goal is to make money, to change your life, to build networks of wealthy clientele, like go offer a service, right? Then when you are undeniably the best at what you do, you can become a coach. That's who we serve, and I've really targeted. And I made my first million with services. I made my second million, like 80% with services, right? And
so what are you talking about when the coach is listening to this and says, "Well, I thought coaching was coaching." What are you talking about when you're talking about services? What in the world does that mean for me as a coach?
Yeah, it means that you actually are involved in doing the actual work of fulfilling and delivering. Maybe it's graphic design, maybe it's funnel building, maybe it's running ads, maybe it's maybe it's cutting people's grass, right? Maybe it's whatever, being a videographer, right? Being a book writer, an editor, whatever, right? That type of thing. And usually there's a coaching element to it. Obviously, I mean, there's some education piece that you teach your client or whatnot. But like, I tried to coach early on and I was like, I can do this. Look at all these results I got. And then I brought people in. I was like, do it. And they didn't do it. And I was like, why aren't you doing it? And they're like, it doesn't work. And I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't work? Clearly it works. Just do the work. And that's not coaching. That's teaching, right? Like anybody can teach. Anybody can teach a concept. Doesn't mean it's going to get a result, right? And, you know, I spent $400,000 in coaching and I realized I suck at coaching, or did. You know, I'm pretty good now because I spent 400 grand. So that would be that. And I would say if you're a coach right now, I think, at least for me, and maybe not for every coach out there, but I think, you know, deep down inside, if what you're doing is working or if it's not. And if you're just kind of figuring it out, or if it's actually working. And it can be embarrassing. It can feel like you're taking a step back. But like at the end of the day, like, you want freedom, you want not to worry about whether you're ruining someone's life or not, whether people hate you or not. Like, just go offer service. Way easier, make way more money, and you earn the right to become a coach when you go make a couple $1,000,000 with the service of whatever it is that you're providing. So that would be for the
kind of like that whole thing of those that can do, those that can't teach, and I guess coach.
Those that can't do teach.
Is go ahead and actually be doing the thing that you're coaching people to be good at. And like you've said, you know, the coaching industry is amazing and life-changing and transformative.
Yes.
But there's also some charlatans in it. There's some people that have never actually done the thing that they're coaching you to do, or their coaching is really just coaching to build coaches that'll coach to you know, it's this circular type thing. And so when it comes to, you know, the transforming podcasting into a profitable thing, and so you know, for the coach, for the service provider, you know, where does the money come in? Is it in what are you talking about as a profit making podcasting business? Golden microphone.
Absolutely. Great question. So I'm going to go back to the relationship piece, right? Because have you ever heard, you know, don't mix money with your friends, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's like, okay, that's actually terrible advice, because all the rich people are all friends and they all do business together, right? So don't do business or don't mix money with your friends that are not committed to operating at the level that you're committed to operating at, right? Yeah, absolutely. But also that's not universal advice, right?
Right.
And when you go back to relationships, it's like, wait, number one is what? Connect on values. And so we create a podcast, right? Step one is to have a podcast, to have a platform, whatever that mechanism that looks like, where you can get in front of, I just call them wealthy clients, right? Like people why sell to broke people, man? Like why do it? Like, it's like, I was broke and I was the worst client. I mean, I tried not to be, but like, rich people got assets. It's way easier to get them a result, right? Go build a charity after you're rich, right? So like, build a platform where it represents an idea. It represents the head smack. It's an idea, right? Like, it's an idea. Think different theory. It's an idea. It's great, right? It's intriguing. It's something that like a wealthy client, someone that's busy will pause and go, I like that. I'll take time out of my day to come talk to you. And then on that podcast, you use the podcast itself to get the attention. And then on the interview itself, that's where you talk values. That's where you connect with these people. That's where you show them. Like, you ever had a conversation with somebody and you get done with that conversation and they're just like, I like you. Like, how do we do something together? Right. That's what you're trying to create with the values. And then the next piece of that relationship is mutual benefit. And I'll ask you, you've dealt with rich people, right? Like, what do they have more of, time or money?
Money,
right? Money, right? You hang out with some rich people, they got so much money, they don't got time, right? And so when I look at and I say mutual benefit, when I say, how do I make these people's lives better? I'm looking for things like, hey, listen, where are things that they're dealing with that I can solve, right? Where are things that I can go and this is why services are powerful, right? It's very hard to sell coaching to someone like that, right? But if I can go and be like, hey, and I'll give you the example, Brad Gibb, he was my first, client. I had this podcast, and I started my podcast, Think Different Theory, originally because I was broke and I couldn't afford masterminds or coaches. And so the entire premise was, I'm going to just go interview successful people and learn what they know, because I can't afford them, right? And I did. I started interviewing people, and all of a sudden I've got Brad Gibb, who's, very successful. He and I have become good friends. I've watched people DM him and be like, I've got 15 grand right now. Like, I'll send it to you. I just wanted, I want some, an hour of your time. And he just ignores them because he's like, I don't have time, right? Very busy, right? Like,
wow.
Right? Like, money's not an issue, right? And he comes on my show Why? Because I didn't ask him to come talk to me. I asked him to come on the show, right? And we sat down for 2 hours. He gave me 2 hours and 2 minutes of his time. And we got done. And he goes, hey, that was good. I like you. Like, that was really, really fun. I know you do some social media stuff. I'm interested in hiring you. Can you send me over a proposal with what that would look like? And like little old Josh never sold anything for more than like $5,000 at the time. I'm like freaking out inside, right? I'm like, oh my God. And so I'm used to funnels and stacks and complicated. So I'm like, sure. And I'm like, just asking him a couple questions. I'm like, what's your problem? And so we get off the call. I hang up and I'm like, tomorrow. Like, he needs by tomorrow, right? Like, what the heck? And so I pull out a Google Doc and I just wrote down, I'm like, you said you had this problem. And like, that's good. I know how to fix it. Like, here's the answer. Here's how it worked. I kind of like laid it all out. And I knew he had a bunch of money. And I'm like, if this guy actually does say yes, like, I'm going to have to give him all my attention, right? Because like, I can't mess that one up. And so I just took how much money I like needed to, like, I thought it, like, if he bought all of my time, and I wrote $30,000, right? And I was like, there's no way, right? Like, there's no way, right? And I sent over the proposal, and it was like, a day or two later, he gets back. He's like, hey, we're in. And like, a week later, he wires me the money. And I was like, those moments in your life where you're like, I do not know what just happened, but I got to do more of that, right?
Wow. That's amazing.
Right. And I was like, whoa, like, these people have money, more money than time. Like, whoa. And you better believe I delivered, right? Like, I delivered. And I mean, we made, I think the first launch we did together, it was like $400,000 or something like that.
Wow.
On it. I mean, we blew it out of the park for him because I got paid $30,000, right? Like, I had the time. And so the whole premise is how do I go and how do I spot those opportunities? How do I find the things where I'm like, hey, you got that problem? Listen, what can I just solve it for you? Like, I think you would, like, if you just had this piece of information, let me send you over something. Like, let me show you how we could just solve it. And then, by the way, if you never want to talk to me again after that, like, if you look at it and go, no, I'll never bring it up. That's fine. Yeah. Right. But like, we've had this conversation. You trust me. We've connected on values. I'm going to make your life better. I promise you $25,000 or $30,000 is nothing to these people, right? They spend it on vacation, once a quarter. Right. And so finding that mutual benefit to where you make their life better and obviously your life gets better. That's where I made my first million. That's where the second million. And like, to this day, I mean, my biggest deal off of a 2-page Google Doc on a podcast was $250,000, right? Wow. Like, wild, right?
Wow.
And multiple ones have been over at or over 6 figures, right? And it's like, that's life-changing money. One deal for a lot of these people. And so that's why I think, if you can be you, if you can know who you are, if you can offer a really good service, if you've got a real skill that can change someone's life, and you want to, like, you're not trying to build the biggest business, you're not trying to have the biggest whatever, you're like, I want to help people, I want to take my skill, I want to make an impact, I want to change these people's lives, provide a real good service, and do it in such a way to where by default my network grows, my knowledge grows, my the people around me grow, I grow, right? That's what the Golden Mike method, right? That's what that does.
That's amazing.
So that's how you turn it into dollars, for sure.
Man, there's so much to unwrap there. I mean, just the fact that it was done through a Google Doc.
2 pages.
For some people, that's a head smack itself because they get so locked into the perfect app, the perfect delivery, the perfect system. But sometimes it's like, if you're offering a solution, if you're offering a problem that you solve and it brings value to the person, a Google Doc is all you need,
Sorry, good.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, one of the biggest perspective shifts I ever had about selling stuff, right, is, first off, I mean, nobody cares about you selling them. Like, it doesn't matter, right? But like, the saying goes, money will flow to whoever creates the most certainty, right? Like, that's where the money goes. So whoever's the most certain, that's where it flows. And when I looked at my sales process, I went, I am going through 7 funnel pages, like 15 emails, a whole price drop, whatever. And then I'm like, 2-page Google Doc. If I say a lot of words, am I certain? No. Right. If I say a little words, am I certain? Yeah. You don't need a lot of words when you're certain. And when Brad told me his issue, I was terrified. So the reason I didn't say anything is because I didn't want to look like an idiot, right? Yeah. But I was like, here's what I do know. I know if you have that and that, I know we can make some money together. Here's how it would work. Why don't we do it? And it worked. And I was like, I have been thinking too hard my whole life. I've been trying way too hard. Right. And money will flow to whoever creates the most certainty. Say less, make more.
That's amazing. There's somebody whose face is swelling up right now from the head smacks that you've just delivered, because it's so easy to get locked into even perfection. It's so easy to, and I've said, imperfect action is better than a perfect plan, because you can have a perfect plan in your head, but not taking any kind of an action, it doesn't matter at all. And sometimes just taking even imperfect action, even if it's a Google Doc, you said it was a 40K project. That's amazing. And for somebody that's like, man, I have not moved. I have not moved forward. I have not reached the things that I need to reach because I'm getting so locked down with all these other things that really are not mattered. I've been tricked into thinking it is all about the perfect funnels and the perfect sequences and all of this stuff, but I haven't got clarity on what it is that I actually solve and giving my clients that certainty that you had talked about.
Yeah.
And so for somebody that, is in a place that you once were, whether it's 18 months ago, 2 years ago, whatever, what would you tell that person now? What would be the first thing you'd tell them right now?
Step one would be, I'd look at them and I'd say, figure out who you are, right? Like if you don't know who you are, like whatever you're building is going to fail, right? The wise man builds his house upon the rock. The foolish man builds his house upon the sand, right? Like you got to know who you are. That's foundation. And then like more tactical advice is like, go sell to rich people. Like I'm not like I think there's this misconception that it's, and I had it, right? It's like, if I sell something for a lot of money, what if I mess up? And I go, no. The analogy I always use is this. Imagine you were a chef and two people hired you to go and cook for them. And the first house you walked into, it had a small little kitchen and it's got some, it's got a few ingredients here and, there's a little house and, people, and you make them a meal, right? And then the second person, you walk in and it's a mansion. They've got 2 or 3 kitchens. They've got every amenity and ingredient and everything that you could possibly need or imagine, every latest gadget or whatever. And like, they wanted you to cook for them too. Which person could you cook a better meal for? And it's like, well, obviously the person with all the resources, right? And it's like, yeah. And guess what? They'd probably have their team come in and clean up after you and tip you on the way out, right? And it's like, you will put in the same amount of effort and the same amount of time and get an exponentially better result because that person had more resources, right? There's like, when you sell to rich people, it's not just that they have money, it's that they have resources to where when you go in, and I'm working with Brad's dealing with, $10,000 a month of Facebook ad spend, a 10 or 20,000 person email list, and a sales team, right? Like, we can make 400 grand like in my sleep off of that. Whereas before, I was dealing with people that had maybe 500 to 1,000 people on their list. They've never sold a high ticket offer before, right? They're the ones making the sales. How do I make that person 400 grand? You just can't. But it took me the same amount of time. And so first, it's figure out who you are, figure out what you're willing to commit to. I mean, get so clear on who you are, what you want, how you're going to operate. And then second, if you want to make some money, like life-changing money, like not like $10 billion, but like you want to like set yourself free financially for basically the rest of your life, like go sell to rich people. And I happen to be biased. The Golden Mic happens to be a pretty good way to go do that.
Well, I've often said, get into bigger rooms and solve bigger problems. And if you could do that, it's gonna work for you. And so as we wrap this up, share a little bit about the Golden Mic. How do they get a hold of you? How do they learn more? And what are some things that they can do to become a part of your world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before I even go into the specific links of it, I will say this. I believe in our program. I think the results speak for themselves. I'm not here to sell anybody anything, right? Like I know we solve a real problem for people, and when people come in and see it. So like, if you're like, yeah, I actually want to go check it out, by all means, I'll give you the links and resources. But my hope is that what you took from this is not go buy something from Josh. My hope is that what you took from this is, hey, I got to go figure out me, and I've got to go, like, I want to go live a life of an example. I want to take care of my family, like that you have some actionable things that you can go apply here. For those that are interested in like, hey, this sounds like maybe something that I would be interested in doing. Obviously, we have the podcast. It's called The Golden Mic. And if you go to, thegoldenmicpodcast.com or joshforti.com, and then on there in links in the descriptions and stuff, you can find, we have a community, my Instagram and stuff, but we have a community for service providers. We got some, challenges and things like that for those people. or just honestly, just send me a message on Instagram. Like, I mean, I'm very active on social media. And I'd love to just have a conversation with you. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we have you on the podcast, or I come on yours. But joshforti.com or thegoldenmikepodcast.com. Those would be the two places to start.
Well, thank you so much, Josh. This has been amazing. Yeah. What a great share of just some amazing aha head smack moments that I think really, if somebody was to listen to this, re-listen to it, take some notes, take some action, just action on one thing. And that's what I want to do with this podcast. Is I believe that you can get inspiration and life-changing aha moments from anybody, whether they're in your space, whether they're in your industry, whether they're in your circle of even interest. You can get an idea, and if you act on it, if you take action on it, it can truly transform your life. And I believe, Josh, what you've shared today, there's so much that people can take from this, be inspired by your journey and to where you're at. And so I appreciate you being on, man. This has been fantastic.
Yeah. Oh man, this was really fun. You asked some really good questions and framed things really well. I can tell it's not your first interview, so well done. Because I said a lot of interviews, and some of them are, it's interesting. It's interesting. So I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much, and I hope your listeners found some value in it.
All right, take care, man. Have a good one.
Yeah, of course. You too.